Welcome to the Mike and Doug Show. Today, I'm really excited because I think when you see what Mr. McKibben and the miners have produced, it will blow your mind. I just particularly want to give a shout out, thanks to all the miners and the shafts,
Absolutely.
wherever you
They're
are.
still there, by the way.
And for you, Mr. McKibben, and all of your staff that pulled all this together.
Remember a guy named Mark Rich
Oh, yes.
that Bill Clinton pardoned on January 20th, 2001, when Bill Clinton left office? Mark Rich. Everybody was up in arms about it. There was a Senate hearing on it. They produced like 1,200 pages of documents, which we have, and that discussed the outrage of giving this pardon to Mark Rich. Well, in CIA documents that CIA released within the last 10 years, we actually see proof that Mark Rich was doing the work of sanction busting for these organizations, including Escher Weiss, and they were getting around the sanctions that we had placed on South Africa, and Mark Rich was facilitating that. So obviously Bill had a little secret that he didn't want to tell anybody. And none of that, by the way, shows up in the congressional record in any of the 1,200 pages.
The Clintons got their piece of every enriched piece of uranium throughout the world through the Clinton-Justra Sustainability Fund, but also through many other things that they did before that. What was it called? Megatons for megawatts. They were the beneficiaries of that. So yes, the Clintons are as dirty as can be, and the dirtier you get in whatever you're studying that's dirty, you will find Hillary Clinton as a little pig slopping around in the dirt. Now let's go back. The Kaiser Wilhelm Institute was doing experiments on humans way back. And so I guess when they got a place like Ravensburg, that they were able to do experiments on Jews in any way they want. They openly experiment. If you were a Jew, you were fair game to be experimented on in Ravensburg. I then am going to assume that since, is it Siemens and IG Farben?
Oh, yeah, I wanted to mention that. Yeah, Siemens and Alice Chalmers here in this country were also involved in that South African technology with Escher Weiss.
And I assume that at Ravensburg, these German companies that were the cutting edge for their technology, which happened to be in a city that was doing the worst, I can only think of the Transvaal. I can only think of the British and the way that they used the Transvaal to experiment on humans outright, openly, under the guise of, the excuse of war or whatever, militarization, whatever they wanted to use as an excuse. And then they were, hands off. Nobody bombed Ravensburg. It was a major place that should have been bombed first, but it wasn't. And they wanted to be able to, the Schwab family wanted to be able to get on the train and do their dirty work in Ravensburg with the other industrialists who sold out to the Nazi regime, and then take the money and take the profits, take the patents, take the company across the border to Switzerland, and there set up basically their untouchable company, which look, to this very day, has anybody ever said a word about them being Nazi collaborators? Were they involved in the Nuremberg trial? They were creating the rockets for them. They were working on heavy water, the nuclear, everything. They were doing all of the evil. And I'm going to suggest they probably created the gases used in the concentration camps. But the Schwab family made a great deal of wealth off of being weavers and cloth and material, which means if you have ever followed the development of computers, that started all in that industry. It would have been absolutely impossible for the Schwab family not to know the IBM punch cards were used to keep track of the people who were put into the concentration camps during the Holocaust by the Nazis. It would have been another industry that was completely working for the Nazis for the kind of annihilation that the German imperialists, Kaiser Wilhelm Institute, in World War I mean, they did horrible experiments that I won't even go into. But in World War II, it became an industry. And I think what we're looking at is Ravensburg is the industry of the Holocaust.
I will point out that in the first meeting of the World Economic Forum in 1971, the president of IBM International was one of the key speakers, along with Otto Habsburg. So here we see that he's giving deference to those that really control him. and probably acknowledging the underlying Kissinger British Pilgrim Society overlords as well, who some were there and some weren't.
The Pan-European Union started, I think, in 1923 or in the 20s. And basically, they'd been trying to put Europe back together as one big group like it was when the Habsburgs had the Holy Roman Empire. When they tried the first Pan-European Union, it failed. And then there were other attempts to economically control the world. When you say United Nations, you say globalism. But the worst form of globalism, the kind that leads to what I believe Klaus Schwab was. He is a hegemonist. He wants global control. Everything in the World Economic Forum points towards come to my company and we will run everything for you. You don't need to worry about a thing. You guys can get your own world currency if you want. And of course, he promotes that through climate control. The climate accord will create a world currency out of carbon.
Well, let's talk about specifically the engineering that we're referring to when we talk about Schwab's family of companies. They are involved in specific types of technology. With Escher Weiss and Sulzer and Andritz, it's anything to do with turbines. And this could be from compressors to energy devices to nuclear to turbines. And on the Festo side, they are specializing right now in artificial intelligence and robotics. So between the two, isn't it fascinating that in all of these priorities that Klaus is pushing forward in the World Economic Forum for the fourth great industrial revolution reset, all of his companies are going to make out like bandits as they collapse the world economies around their particular technologies.
That's right. They get into every big industry there is, and the bigger it is, the more they're in it. They have the biggest projects in the whole world, and they have how many? 50,000 people working for the two combined groups?
I can see what's going on here, and for those that don't know, I'm an engineer myself. And so what I see Klaus doing is he's pushing this carbon credits mechanism as a way to drive the world economy toward his turbine technologies and toward his automation. Because if you're going to have fewer human beings running things, then you need to have robots. So that's the Festo engineering. If you want more efficient turbines, I think we don't even know the half of the technologies that these guys are suppressing right now, like thorium reactors, like closed cycle, various types of plasma reactors. I think they've probably got all that. And they've had it. So they had to make a market. They had to figure out a way to make a market for it and force people to do it. And then get the banks to fund them so that they could build all these new pieces of technology. Well, I think the jig is up. By the way, the reason they were involved in South Africa, according to South African documents, was that they had developed for hundreds of years seals that go around the shafts on turbines. They go back to gas turbines and steam turbines and developed quite an expertise in that particular field of engineering. And one of the areas of failure for a turbine is when the shaft is rotating around the bearings, you need to seal that shaft so that you don't get leakage of material back and forth through the shaft itself. And apparently, Escher Weiss had the market on that. That was what they had to have on these compressors in South Africa, among other things. Obviously, Hitler thought it was a good thing, so he made them a model company so that they would keep serving him. And I need to add, one of the things when you talk about the South African story is that the United States in 1965, the Department of Energy, is the one that set up South Africa in the nuclear business, along with the British, CIA, and MI6. We set them up. We hired Escher Weiss. The rogue American government, the real shadow government, is the one that created Klaus Schwab. So we're fighting ourselves again.
Now, I just want to point out, thank you again for the research because it's astounding. Klaus Schwab was someone I always disliked, the World Economic Forum. Every time I saw its name anywhere, I knew that it had to do with evil. But I want to make this perfectly clear. He is basically the new National Socialism, but it's global socialism under the guise of socialism, which will become communism, which is always led by a dictator who has created an ism. His reset, which everyone in the world now go, oh yeah, we're entering the reset. They don't even know what it means. It's such a word that has become brainwashed into our minds, and it's simply basically saying the same thing as National Socialism, Leninism, Bolshevism. It's an ism where there's a new class system and a new caste system.
Let me throw in another little factoid. If people are not believing this, Vladimir Lenin was put in a sealed train and sent through Germany all the way back to St. Petersburg, where he started the Bolshevik Revolution. Well, we started looking at where he lived, and he lived in Zurich, near the library in Zurich. And get this, he was a 10-minute walk from the Escher Weiss manufacturing campus in Zurich. Now, you don't think he was sponsored by Escher Weiss? I am convinced he was.
Oh, absolutely. The British and the Swiss have always worked together. So when you talk about really corrupt banking, you have to put them hand in glove. They're one and the same. And then also because of Five Eyes and our agreement, their agreements with America, everything the Americans did is always given to the Swiss immediately. Oh, immediately, just handed to them because they're a neutral country. That's the insanity of how effective their propaganda is. So remember, the World Economic Forum is the Fourth Reich. Klaus Schwab is a creator of an ism. He's a creator of reset-ism, we can call it. His type of reset, because it resets into his new class system, which he's defined, which simply serve his industry and his self-aggrandizement. And actually, when you listen to him, as far as I can tell, he's not a smart guy, and we need to basically make it illegal for those 3,000 people to meet because it's insider trading. So thanks again for the research. When people see what you've done, it's going to blow their minds.